everyone. Welcome back to Williamson Ridge Outdoors. Today we are down here at our oak tree, and this one actually, the top in it is dead, and it's getting to the point where, you know, stuff's falling out of it, so it's ready to cut. And I don't want it to die out too much. I want to get it cut before the rot goes throughout the whole tree, because then, you know, it's not good firewood. We'll get it now, and it'll be a great test for this Atlas 80-volt lithium chainsaw. So I'm a little skeptical about actually sawing down a tree with it, and this is a pretty good sized tree. I mean, it's probably 12, 14 inches, but this is an 18-inch chainsaw, so theoretically, you know, it should have no problems, especially considering they say it's commercial grade. So we're going to jump in here and get this thing cut down, and after we get finished with that, we'll actually go through and I'll tell you a little bit more about the chainsaw. Another thing I want to point out, I am in no means a professional arborist, and this is not a how-to video. This is just simply a demonstration of the Atlas 80-volt chainsaw and its possible capabilities. I was actually surprised at how well it did cutting the tree off the stump. So far, I'm pretty surprised. The chain actually looks a little bit dry, and I did go through, I checked it and to make sure that the oiler and everything is working, and it is, so. But here's another cool thing. As soon as you quit cutting, it's quiet. You don't have to, you don't have the saw sitting there running. And, if there's somebody around you, as soon as you let off of it, that's it. So we are at half charge with our battery. Probably can't see that because I'm sitting here in the direct sunlight, and the saw will not run. It's not the chain brake, it's nothing. So the only thing I can think of, either the battery is too hot, which it's just kind of warm, it's not really hot, or the saw has kicked into protection mode and won't let you run it. We're dead in the water. I figured that it would get through most of the battery, if not all of the battery, without actually overheating or getting to the thermal protection. And it's kind of sad that it won't, because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of firewood that's cut out of this tree. The saw cuts extremely well while it's cutting. And I just heard something click in it. Maybe that was the thermal thing kicking back over. Yep. So let's go at it and see how much longer it will run now that it has kicked back on. It ran for about a second and then it shut back off. And you can kind of hear that thing clicking inside there, and I'm assuming it's probably some kind of a temperature sensor. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go get the other saw and see if it's the battery or see if it's the saw kicking off. Nothing. I'm assuming there's a thermal protection in the battery itself. The battery is, like I say, it's pretty warm. It's evidently in that protection mode, and I cannot use my battery powered saws. That is definitely 100% advantage towards a gas saw. I thought these things would actually go a little bit farther before they just shut down and at least run the battery dead, but we're sitting dead in the water here. So if you're a commercial user of this, there's no way, I don't see how they get by with saying they're commercial grade, because that is not, to me, a commercial grade. Commercial grade is something that you can take out and use it all day, day in and day out, and it's fine. You cannot do that with this. I've only used this maybe, what, 15 minutes? So now I'm sitting dead in the water and can't use it. The saws cut amazing. They do an awesome job. Like, they have tons of power. They cut great. They cut fast, especially considering the size. The point is, they're claiming commercial grade on these, and I'm not seeing it out of that. So I'm pretty disappointed, actually. I thought that you would at least get through a battery before you could overheat the tool. So now I'm sitting here and can't do anything. It's been about 15 minutes, and the battery is now, like, it's functioning in the saw, so we're going to run it. And now that it's cooled off enough for the saw to run, we're going to continue running it and see how much longer it'll last. One cut. How annoying is that, that your commercial grade tool runs for, I cut 7 pieces of firewood, and then the battery got too hot, waited 15 minutes, made 1 cut, and it's too hot again. Man, that sucks. But, you know, I don't understand why a company comes out and they claim something as commercial grade, but yet it won't even come close to what a commercial user would use this for. So what I'm gonna end up probably doing is getting my gas chainsaw and finishing this tree up, because I need to get the firewood cut. I don't want to be out here all day long waiting on this battery to cool down, and the job's got to get done. So what am I going to do? I'm going to revert back to a gas chainsaw to be able to finish the job. More tests to come though, because if you're not using this to cut big stuff, and you might cut a few times and then set it down for a few minutes, it'll probably run fine. It'll probably run all day, probably no big deal. But I am shocked that it just won't run capacity and stay cool enough to not be shutting off all the time. So a couple things about this Atlas 80 volt saw. Of course, we got an 18-inch bar. This is a 3/8 pitch, low profile, and the thickness of this chain is actually 43 thousandths. The saw itself is actually not as light as I thought it would be. I would have thought that this would be, you know, a fair amount lighter than its gas counterpart. The 80 volt without the battery weighs 10.5 pounds, 10 pounds 8 ounces. And with the battery in it, that battery adds 3 pounds to it. So you're looking at 13.5 pounds for this saw. My CS590 with the 24-inch bar on it right now weighs 19 pounds. So that kind of gives you an idea that, you know, this one's 13.5 and the Echo is 19, or maybe a little bit more than that. It's 19 pounds and something. So while this is not a, you know, it doesn't have a 24-inch bar on it, it's not rated, it's not a 60cc equivalency. They're saying that this one is a 50cc equivalency. I would say that it's probably right in the same weight category as what a 50cc saw would be. So, with all that out of the way, what did we learn today? Well, in my opinion, I don't think that Harbor Freight should rate this as a commercial grade saw. Now, this thing cuts great. It has tons of power. It does all that stuff extremely well, but the battery overheated and it only had been used half charge. So that kind of tells me that it's not intended to use continuous. Like, it's meant to use in sporadic times. You might have some tree branches to cut down, you know, or some smaller stuff that you can cut right through, and then you might set the saw down for 20 or 30 minutes while you're doing something, and then come back to it and do that again. But for continuous use, it is not meant for that, or the thermal protection wouldn't kick on so quickly. Once we got it working again, I actually ended up putting it into the 40 volt and using it to trim the rest of the tree and get all the small branches and stuff. So with that being said, we had to rely on our gas powered saws to finish up the job because we did only have one battery. If I had two batteries, that may have went differently. You know, the 40 volt, who knows, the 40 volt might have actually cut a whole lot more because it's not running nearly the power out of the battery. So the battery could have not overheated as quickly before it shut the saw off, or maybe not even overheated at all, because you're only running half the output of the battery. Then it may not heat up at all. But when you're running the 80 volt and it's running full capacity, it does heat up under continuous use and shut the saw down. So I'm not completely out on this whole battery thing yet. I want to get a second battery. You know, if it does heat up and shut off and I switch batteries out and let the hot battery cool down, will the other battery give me enough runtime to let the hot battery cool down enough to be able to use it? The saw cuts extremely well, and that's where I'm sold at, because it does work extremely well. And a couple times, even while I was using it, I stopped and spoke to the camera for a second, and it's because it's quiet. As soon as you quit cutting your tree, you have no noise from it. And I love that about these, you know, the battery saw. But in a commercial setting, or putting hard use to a tool like this, there's just too much downtime on it. So we're gonna have to see how things go with it. And for me personally, you know, it's so much easier to grab this saw and a battery and just go toss it in the razor. If I'm going down the trail and there's a tree there, you can saw that out of the way. And, you know, for that type of use, I don't think you could beat this type of a tool. But for continuous use, I just don't know that something like this is going to hang on to what a gas can do. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, share this video with anybody you know, and thanks for watching.